All right. Okay. LinkedIn Live. I've never done this before, so I don't know if I'm going to see chats from you guys or anything, but we're going to talk about some data that I've been looking at. This is an analysis I've been working on. It involves Target. And so, some interesting stuff has come out of it. And actually, in this little event here, we're only going to talk about just a couple of data points. And the whole point of this is to just show you what is possible if you're using your point of sale data, right? And in fact, I'm not even going to show sales information. We are only going to use Target's network of stores and a couple of data points that I appended to that. Okay, this is something that anyone can do. All right, so you guys can see my screen. What's on the screen here, I just loaded this all up in Tableau to show you guys. But this is Target's network, right? It's pretty straightforward, right? It's national coverage. You can see we're like covered in all of the city centers. You could look at this and say, if I'm trying to plan like advertising, merchandising strategies, something with my retailer, it would be pretty easy to break this up into regions or something. And that's what most people do. What most people don't do is take all of this chaos that is actually making up the Target trade areas. They never take this and actually use it for decision making. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that with just a couple of data points. Again, this is something anyone can do. The segmentation part might be a little difficult, but I'll show you that. So this is, again, Target with 2 data points. This has total population in the size of the circle, and then it's got disposable income driving the colors. Why is disposable income important versus just general income? Disposable income is the measure of how much money is left over after taxes. This is how much spending power a consumer has inside that trade area. Very important metric, right? And very important when you're talking about a national system of stores. $1 of spending power is different in California than it is in Texas. Tax rates are different. So if I make $60,000 in California, it's one thing. If I make $60,000 in Kansas, one of the lowest cost of living states, it's a whole different thing. We also have low taxes, right? Texas, same thing. So disposable income is a really important metric. I love to use it with analysis like this. But so like this map, even looking at it like this, you could make some decisions, right? California, a bunch of big trade areas, lots of income. The red is higher income. Texas, right? Houston, Dallas, same thing. But let's look just one layer deeper. So let's zoom into California. Actually, let's go to Southern California here. It's chaos, right? I've got big stores and small stores. I've got stores that have a lot of income, of the consumers in the trade area have a lot of income. I've got stores that have just a little bit of income, right? This is like, how do you make a decision on this if you're going to plan advertising, allocate inventory, work with Target on merchandising in store? Let's look in some of these Texas areas. Same thing, right? The city center is huge. The outskirts are not as huge. You would expect that. Let's look at this East Coast area, right? How do you make a decision on this? Okay. So this is only 2 measures. We're not even overlaying sales into this data. Let's look at this disposable income piece. And now we're going to dig into some segmentation ability. So this is the spectrum of disposable income for every Target store. You've actually got a little bar here for every Target. And the spectrum, this is median disposable income. The spectrum is 36, 37, all the way up to 115, maybe 120 on the high side. The midpoint is about 65, okay? Disposable income, this is what, like, I would expect this across the country, this kind of distribution. But this doesn't even tell the whole story. Median income is actually made up of several categories, okay? So in this chart, you've actually got a bar, again, for every Target, but the coloring is the category of median income. Does that make sense? So Like you've got 9 categories going from above 200,000 to under 15,000. Okay. They're all different. It doesn't matter how I sort this chart. It is complete craziness. It's absurd. But this is the reality of this one. Okay, this is nice and clean. It's easy to make decisions on. I could say, hey, I want to grab all my stores that are median income of $50,000 to $75,000. The reality is the median can be very different. That can be a very different makeup of the share across these categories. And here's an example of that. So this is so cool. These 3 stores, Burbank, Boulder, and Blue Springs, Missouri, are all the same median income within about $1,500 of each other. They're all around that $67,000 range. Just glancing at this, so this chart, the way you read this, the colors are the share of the different income categories. So like this kind of mustard color here is $50,000 to $75,000. The share of people in that trade area around that target that meet that criteria. So like Blue Springs, it's 25%, 24%. In Burbank, it's almost 19%. Okay. That's how to read this. Just glancing at this, you see an outlier with Blue Springs, right? Even though they are the same median income, if you're making decisions on median income, you're going to treat these stores the same. The reality is the people inside that trade area are different. Burbank, you've got over 10% in this super high income bracket. And you've got, again, almost 20% in this super low income bracket. That's not the same for Blue Springs, right? Blue Springs is much more centered between the $50,000 to $100,000 range. We got to treat these stores differently, right? It's going to depend on what we're trying to do, but I would look at these 2 stores differently. Let's take this one step further. Let's add one more variable here, cost of living. What's different across these 3 areas around how far a dollar goes? Throw out taxes. Let's not even worry about taxes at this point. Let's just talk about general cost of living. Does $1 in Missouri go the same distance as $1 in Burbank, California? Absolutely not. So this is showing you the same 3 stores. It's showing you the cost of living index for those locations. So 100 is the average across the country. If you're at 100, you're at the average. So Boulder is at 105. That's pretty close to the average. Blue Springs is at 90. Burbank, 142. So even if I was targeting just one category, or like let's grab 2 here, 2 categories in this, like my customer is making between $50,000 and $100,000, and that's the only people I'm going to talk to. That $50,000 to $100,000 can mean very different things depending on where that person is. Okay, this is a trap a lot of people fall into. I think everybody across the country is the same if they meet these criteria. Not the case. This is why no one does this. Okay, this is why my life is complete chaos when we're doing these analyses. Okay. So let's take this a step further. Total population is different too, right? So again, if I'm just targeting a couple of these categories, the size of the pool of people I can target is different. We're talking about 3 simple data points. A trade area is made up of hundreds of different data points, okay? Hundreds of differences across all these stores. This gets really complex really quick. Okay, so we've talked about disposable income, we've talked about cost of living, and we've talked about total population. So how do we make decisions on this, right? How do I take this complete mess and group it into categories that I can drive a plan around, whether I'm trying to decide how much inventory to send to different areas, how to allocate my field sales team's activities, how to plan advertising, messaging around that advertising, right? Think about messaging in Blue Springs versus Burbank. It might be different, right? If you're like a company that has a value message or pricing, I would really think about treating these differently. So let's talk about segmentation. So we take this crazy mess of stores. I did cheat. I used the magnetic platform to do this segmentation, but in theory, anyone can do this type of work. And there's actually 5 types of stores across the target system. So I segmented on 3 variables. This spectrum of disposable income, which is actually 9 variables. I segmented on cost of living and then on total population. And this is what it came back with. So I don't know if you can see in the stream how different these segments are, but we're going to talk about these real quick here and then we'll be done. So these are your 5 segments. It goes 0 through 4. I didn't rename these. But there was some interesting stuff that came out of this. So like, if we just look at segment number 1 and 2 here, this is again, your same share chart for disposable income. It doesn't look that different, right? This segment 2 is a little lighter on the low end, but everything else is pretty consistent. What is different is the cost of living between these 2 groups. Group 1 is 142 on the cost of living index, very high cost of living. Group 2 is 100. They're right at the average. Group 2 makes the median for Group 2 on income, disposable income, is 93,000. It's 88,000 for Group 1. They're different, right? If I'm planning something, I would probably treat these 2 categories different. So let's look and see where these are. Group 1 and 2. That's how they group 1 and group 2 here. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Group 1 is this orange group on the coasts. Group 2 looks like probably not city centers, but suburbs of city centers. We could drill in and look at these. So that's kind of interesting. You definitely treat those differently. But let's look at one more, Group 3. So Group 3 also highest cost of living, $60,000 median income. Let's compare that to Group 1 here. The share looks different, right? Group 3 over here is much heavier in the bottom end of the income spectrum, right? Even up to 35,000. So like, I don't know if it's a high poverty area or whatever, but 35 and under is a big share of that trade area. And look at the upper end of the spectrum, even all the way down to 100,000, very different. Okay. So now we're looking at 2 groups, same cost of living, very different income levels. Am I going to treat these 2 differently? Absolutely. Right. $60,000 does not go very far in this world. 88,000 maybe goes farther. Okay. So let's look and see where these 2 are in comparison to each other. So it's Group 1 and 3. So we looked at Group 1 already. These are this orange group. Group 3, the red group. So again, this is actually really cool for a guy like me because I didn't touch this segmentation. This is just what the algorithm came back with. But it pulled together 2 types of stores on the coasts in these high income or high cost of living areas. So now think about like taking this to Target, right? With some plans around it. Hey, we're getting ready to kick off a new advertising campaign, and we think we have a lot of opportunity because it's going to be a value-based message. We're going to lower price, or we're going to do something, coupons, rebates, whatever, and we're going to treat these 2 groups of stores differently. We're running a test on this. How many stores is this? 268, 400 stores, right? That's almost a third of Target's network. It's a good test set, right? Before I blast something out nationally, before Target, I ask you to do something in every store, let's test it in some areas that I've identified where I have a hypothesis on why it's going to work. Okay. Even just these 2, you may take this Group 1 and take like a benefits type message against them. I'm just talking about marketing because it's top of mind for me right now. This can apply to a lot of things. I might take Group 3 and put a value message, right? This may be some type of price-based promotion if my retailer can manage that at this level. Or I might just hit all of these with the same thing because I know they're super high cost of living and they're probably all a little bit worried about spending right now. Okay. So this is how this stuff gets used, right? We used 3 data points to break apart this system. And again, imagine walking into Target or whatever retailer you're in, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, PetSmart, Petco, it doesn't matter. They love this stuff. They eat it up because now it gives that buyer or that category manager some information, data-backed suggestions to take to their people to get this stuff done. It's a lot more than, oh, we think we have a lot of opportunity in California because the people who live there are really aligned with our product. So we're going to do this special thing in California. It's like, no, there's actually, I don't know what percentage of stores in California this actually is. It might be all of them. Yeah, it might be all of them. But I know these specific stores in California, these specific stores up here on the East Coast are primed for this specific promotion that I am going to run. Target, how can you help me with this? What can we partner on? This is how this stuff happens. Okay. So I know I said in the description I was going to talk about Walmart, but we're already at 16 minutes and I don't want this to be long. So I'm going to end it here. Next time we'll talk about Walmart, and we're going to be doing these like every week. Okay. I've got some people lined up to have some conversations with, both in the data space as well as retail and CPG, which I think are going to be awesome, but we'll also be looking at cool data. Okay. We'll continue to break this apart. Also, if this is interesting to you and you want, I can't give you the whole data set, but I can give you the cost of living data set. So if you want that, I can show you where to get it, or I can probably send you a CSV. Just send me an email or just contact me here on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get me. All right. Thanks.